I'm J.G. Michael, and this is Parallax Views. On this edition of Parallax Views, we continue our coverage of the coronavirus pandemic, this time through Palestinian eyes, as photojournalist Walid Mahmoud, whose work has been featured in Al Jazeera English, The Middle East Eye, and Jewish Voice for Peace, joins us to discuss the coronavirus pandemic in the Gaza Strip. Now, for those unfamiliar, Gaza has been under a blockade enforced by Israel and Egypt since 2007, which has, needless to say, made conditions in Gaza rather desperate for those living within the Palestinian territory. And things are only getting more desperate as coronavirus, the pandemic that has wreaked havoc around the world, finds its way into the Gaza Strip, where medical supplies like ventilators are not easy to come by. This is a little bit briefer than most of our conversations on Parallax Views, clocking in at just under 40 minutes, but I believe that it is a powerful discussion. And despite the desperate conditions in Gaza, Walid maintains a hope that the Palestinian people and humanity as a whole will beat the virus, that COVID-19 will die, but that the struggle for peace will never perish. And with that being said, let's get right into the conversation with Walid Mahmoud, Gazan photojournalist and activist. Welcome to Parallax Views, Gazan photojournalist and activist, Walid Mahmoud. How are you doing today?
Thanks, my G. I'm doing okay. Nothing bad, but, stress. I think many people around the world are feeling stress through hearing the news about the COVID-19 disease. How about you?
I'm hanging in there. I was very worried about Gaza when I heard the first two cases happened. Maybe for my listeners that are not as familiar with Gaza, why is Gaza really at risk when it comes to coronavirus?
Unfortunately, as you know, Gaza has been isolated in the past, and it's still isolated for over 13 years since the Israeli occupation imposed the siege on over 2 million civilians people here in Gaza, and they make Gaza like small cage. We are in lack for all aspects of life here. The situation is humanitarian more than being political here. When it comes about health, especially about coronavirus, We are talking about a big disaster which may happen here because the Ministry of Health here in Gaza Strip, they are in lack for medical equipment, for hospitals, for ventilators devices, for medication. So the other thing is that we have 5 camps, refugee camps here in Gaza, where people are living in a small distance of area. You may found like 200,000 people living in like 10 kilometers square, which makes things dangerous for them to be in a quarantine or to be in home, because the houses also are beside each other. There is no distance between the houses. There is no services here in Gaza. Added to that, the employment rate. People have to work daily here. They are dependent on daily financial and daily funds by working a simple work here. And many other people who don't have work. So if they decided to go to quarantine time, they will not be able to provide food for their families, which will make them starving here and dying from hunger. Gaza's living right now between the coronavirus and the Israeli siege. So there is no way expect the death and expect the disaster here. Unfortunately, this is how it's going. In the last week, there were 2 people who were in Pakistan for a conference, and Egyptian side decided to open the Rafah crossing point for the people who want to come back to Gaza. 2 of them were carrying the coronavirus, COVID-19 virus, and the Ministry of Health discovered them. They were fine, and the ministry says they are feeling healthy until now, but unfortunately their coronavirus tests were positive. After that, the Ministry of Health in Gaza announced that there is 7 of security police who worked to convoy and to move those 2 cases from Rafah crossing point to the field hospital. It's a small hospital which built by the Ministry of Gaza here. This hospital, actually, you cannot call it hospital because they are in lack for medical equipment, but they set up like 5 tents around Rafah crossing point. They will put the people who carrying and who their results are positive in those tents. It's a tent, like a camp, it's not building. So the Ministry of Health announced that the 7 security police who meet those 2 cases their results are positive too. So until now in Gaza Strip, we have 9 positive coronavirus cases, which makes people worried and living in fear and distress all the time. Gaza is different from any other cities. Gaza is not Italy, it's not China, but it's more dangerous, It's more dangerous. It's more than Italy or China or any other city around the world because of the siege, because it's isolated, and because this city actually unlivable city, as the United Nations says in its resolution that Gaza will not be livable in 2020.
So, Walid, for my listeners, I have a few listeners that may be a bit younger, that are just entering college. I have some listeners even in high school still. They may be unfamiliar with the siege in Gaza, especially some of my listeners in the U.S., and I apologize for that. What are the conditions of the siege on Gaza? What do we mean when we call this a siege?
Right now, Gaza is doing its best. Despite all the things we talked about, Gaza is doing its best to deal with coronavirus. They stopped high schools. They stopped kindergarten to be working. They asked people, they closed the mosques, all mosques in Gaza. They closed schools, they closed actually many buildings, the public shops here in Gaza Strip. The siege is something, it's like a cancer here in Gaza. It's everywhere. Many sick people who cannot move, who cannot get their medication, who cannot doing their surgeries. The siege is affecting so much even on mental health. People are depressed. People are feeling stress all the time. Stress is killing them slowly, one by one. This is how is the siege here in Gaza. You cannot import medical equipment. You cannot export anything from here. You can't work because unemployment rate, there is no job for the young people. So if you are graduated from your school, you will not be able to have work for your family and help them or build your future. The people also here in Gaza Strip, they are thinking 24 hours about their future, how it will be, when the Israeli occupation will break the siege and make them live free. The other thing is, it's something stress. You can just replace yourself that you are like a bird and living in a small cage and you need to breathe. But unfortunately, Gaza doesn't breathe. This is the problem. This is how the siege looks like here after 13 years of a blockade, It's a disaster here.
The Gaza Strip has been under siege for 13 years, essentially blockaded by Israel. It's hard to get supplies. It seems like a very difficult situation. And adding coronavirus into that, I imagine tensions are very, very high right now. And I imagine social distancing may be very difficult in Gaza.
It's hard to practice the social distancing here, Gazans are... Now it's not the tradition, it's our culture, it's different. We are Eastern people, not like the West, Families are big here. You may find like 9 people living in a small house which contain of 2 or 3 rooms. So you cannot make a social distancing with others people here. It's really hard to ask people to do the social distancing. But people are doing their best. For example, they stop the handshake with each other. Added to that, we have public shops here where thousands of people are meeting every day to make shopping with lowest prices here. We don't have that malls or that big shopping when you go and walk alone to make shopping. But here you have to mix with people, you have to walk around them by their side. When you go to buy things like vegetables or fruit, or when you go to buy fish, unfortunately, as I said, we are in lack for everything, for all aspects of life. For example, we have 8 hours of power shortage here every day, which make it worse. If you are gonna to stay house and you don't have electricity, how you can practice the social distancing, or how you can live in darkness or sleep in darkness while you have 8 hours of power shortage every day? It's worse.
And also, my understanding is that in Gaza there are 2 million people, but currently only 60 ventilators. At least that's what I was reading on the 24th.
That's right. The Ministry of Health yesterday announced that they have only 60 ventilators. We are 2 million people, and they have only 60 ventilators, which actually most of them are busy right now in intensive care units and intensive care rooms, So the truth is they have less than 60 ventilators will be working if someone gets the coronavirus here. Can you just imagine 2 million people with 60 ventilators? So the Ministry of Health yesterday in a conference, they asked the world to provide for them the medical equipment and more ventilators to save the lives of others people. Added to that, we have elderly people, we have children, we have kids. And as I said, we can't practice the social distancing here in Gaza. People are struggling, There is no jobs, there is no funds. When there is, people are depending on daily fund, they are work day by day. They cannot save money for the next day. So if they impose or ask us to stay home, it will be hard for them to get vegetables, to get the fruit or milk for their kids, People will be starving and dying from hunger if they are not working.
Now, is there any way other countries or the UN can help with supplies, or does the siege prevent that? Has there been any attempts to help Gaza at this point from others?
The siege make it worse, the siege make everything worse. But we are lucky when Israel imposed the siege, they didn't impose the siege on you to die quickly, to die in short time, but to die slowly, They want you like the sick people who are in the intensive care unit. They don't want you to move your body. They want you just doing the hard breathing, This is how is the situation here. We are hardly breathing. We are between life and death. They are not killing you completely. They don't want to kill you completely because of the world. But look, for example, United Nations is providing small food package monthly for the refugees' families only. There's a difference between being a refugee here in Gaza or being a citizen, If you are a citizen, you are not gonna get food. But if you are a refugee and having United Nations card, you can get the food monthly. And not that much of food, It's like only sugar and oil and some rice. The other thing, when they open the crossing points, they don't want all people to move. They don't want you to move. And added to that, we have people who have cancer. The cancer rate, if you make a comparison for the cancer rate here in Gaza, you will find this percentage is high here in Gaza Strip. There are many people who need medical every day, but they cannot buy it. We have literally people who has no work, who cannot move, who need wheelchairs, who need pampers for their health, but unfortunately they cannot get them. This is how is the situation. People are thinking of each other. They want to help each other. But unfortunately, they are depending on some humanitarian organizations, international organizations such like Islamic Relief or United Nations. So as I said, we are in intensive care unit already. We are hardly breathing. If you cannot break the siege, we will stay like this. We are living on ventilators right now. So people are asking, even yesterday with the coronavirus, when I walk in the street, people say there is no excuse there is also no excuse to keep this siege on us as the world is suffering from coronavirus. If they break the siege, food will be coming from Arab countries quickly or any other countries. Medical supply will be entered Gaza. People will be able to move. People will be able to work. We have been asking Israel to break the siege for that 13 years, but unfortunately, Israel keep ignoring the Gazans' voice to break the siege.
You mean even under the conditions of this coronavirus outbreak, Israel is not even showing any interest in breaking the siege?
No, they haven't shown anything. They're not. Even yesterday, they launched air raids against Gaza last night.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, they don't care about that. They don't care about this area. They left us alone. They only put their army on the gates of Gaza and ask us to stop, and they use their gun. Don't move. Even speaking, they don't want us to speak. If you go to speak, if you go to the border to say we need our rights, we need to live such like other human beings, they will call you a terrorist, and they will call you to shut down and to shut your mouth and don't speak. Even our right to speak. We are prevented from it here.
Speaking of those air raids that you mentioned, what is the basic story on the raids that happened last night? Because it's only just breaking the news here in the U.S.
Yesterday, the Israeli claimed that there's rocket and missiles which fired from Gaza. So, in response for this rocket, they decided to launch a raid at the mid of night, where children are sleeping and the most of Gazans people are sleeping. Those air raids causes a huge voice, which can be annoying and make you wake up from your sleep, like a nightmare. They bomb around the houses, areas around the camps. That's what happened when Israel launched raids on Gaza recently. So they targeted empty places around the cities just to threat us.
And my understanding is Israel still. I was reading that even as late as March 20th, there's still being civilian homes demolished. Palestinian vegetable and fruit markets are being demolished by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank. Is that also the case?
Yes, they divided Gaza from West Bank, treated Gaza not like the West Bank. But as I'm living in Gaza and I cannot move to the other part of my homeland, to West Bank, so I haven't visited West Bank before, but as I see on the news, it's also worse there. There are a lot of many checkpoints. But let me talk to you and tell you about my experience as Palestinian who is living in Gaza and didn't live Gaza before. Gaza demolished everything. They demolished our airport, our international airport in 2002. They demolished thousands of dams and greenhouses in Gaza Strip. They targeted and killed many farmers. The agricultural land here in Gaza is near the border, near the fence. So farmers used to work every day there nearby the fence, but the Israeli has committed many crimes against them. They asked them not to come to their land and work. They used to shoot fire toward them, and they killed many farmers who has been working in their lands, agricultural lands. They stop you to work. They don't want you to work. There is no excuse for that. When you are working on your own land, it's your right. But unfortunately, they use fire to prevent you to reach to your land. They targeted the vegetable crops, the fruit crops, the whole infrastructure here in Gaza Strip. Even in 2014, when they attacked my village, they killed like 200 people, civilians. Many of them were civilians in my village, and they destroyed the whole village completely without any excuse for that. Many crimes has been committed in 2014 in front of my eyes and in front of my town and my people here who's living here in Gaza. Unfortunately, the mainstream media, it's something to blame. They don't speak about Gaza. They keep ignoring the voice of Gaza, the sounds of Gazans. They still don't want to talk about the 2 million civilians people. So we decided to use, last 2 years, we decided to go to the border and the fence and to make a protest there, peaceful protest, to ask the world to break the siege on Gaza. But unfortunately, we have been responded, and the response we get is the blood. They killed many children and nurses. They targeted journalists. They killed even my colleague, Yasser Murtaja, if you heard about him in 2018. So even when we went to speak in a peaceful protest near the fence, we were faced by fire. Israel For me, as Palestinian, I believe in peace, and I would love to see the Palestinian and Israeli people living a distant live without any kind of violence. But unfortunately, Israel always believes in violence. They don't believe in peace. Even the two-state solution, we are all know that Palestinians accepted the two-state solution, and they said, okay, we are accepting it, let's implement it. And when instead of implementing the two-state solution, they asked the U.S. administration to recognize Jerusalem, the whole Jerusalem, as the capital of Israel. They moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They recognized Israel as a state, but they ignoring the voice of Palestinians. We were promised by American government that they are gonna to recognize Palestine as a state too, and they want to make the two-state solution. They killed it. They faced it by violence, by guns, by fires. For us as Palestinians, we don't believe in this language. For me personally, Walid Mahmoud, I don't believe in the language of violence as I believe in the language of peace. Let's sit on the table. Let's talk. Let's discuss. Let's break the siege on Gaza. Let's make something positive. Let's show the world that we are believing in peace. Stop killing the children. When Palestinians came to the fence and the protest, in peaceful way, without carrying any kind of guns, without practicing any violence, in front of the Israeli soldiers. The soldiers must listen to us. The whole world must listen to us. Okay, let's see what those Palestinians need nearby the fence. Let's tell the truth. What's the goal of this great march of return? Our rights, that's what we need.
I was just going to add, I think people should remember, it's not just Palestinian voices pointing out what is being done to Gaza, and what is being done to Gaza, for my listeners, is really terrible. Gideon Levy, a really great Israeli journalist, has been talking about the horrendous treatment of Gaza by the Israeli state. Jewish Voice for Peace has done good work. I really wish people would consider the lives at stake in Gaza right now.
Yes, this is our message, We need peace. We want to live such like others people around the world. We have rights, and we need those rights, such like the right of movement. I want to move whenever I want. I want to travel for study. I want to travel for work. I want to travel to meet my family in the other country. I want to visit my friends around there. I need my right to health. When there is no medication in my city, I want to move to the other country to get medication, That's only what we need. We need our country. We need peace. We want to live peacefully. We don't believe in violence or using fire against civilians. This is but unfortunately, media, Jewish Voice for Peace, it's a Jewish organization, and they realize the right of Palestinians to live. Our problem is not political, it's a humanitarian. Just be human. Think of others as human around you. You are not the only one who living here. We are all on this world are living under the same sky, on the same earth, on the same planet. That's it.
Well, I think
Israelis think they are the only one. They think that they are the holy people and they are the only one who has the right to live on this planet, which unfortunately wrong, And if you say that, they will call you are anti-Semitic, you are racism, no, we are not.
Well, I think even, I've noticed there's all kinds of reports about the confirmed cases of coronavirus in Israel, but there's barely any coverage of the cases in Gaza. And I think that in itself is racist.
Let me just tell you something happened recently. In the West Bank, there are many Palestinian workers who's actually working inside Israel. And their boss are Israeli people. Unfortunately, when the coronavirus crisis came, the Israeli withdrew the bunkers and they put them on the checkpoints and forced them to leave. Many of them were in a critical and in dangerous health situation. And the Palestinian Authority on the checkpoints, they collect them and make the test of them. One of them were carrying the coronavirus from Israel. He was working in Israel, and when he came back home, he was carrying the coronavirus, and his mom died last few days only because of coronavirus. Even in coronavirus, if you are Palestinian and working inside Israel and you found yourself you are sick with coronavirus, you cannot use the Israeli hospital. It's impossible for you to use the Israeli hospital. You have to go back to your home and to your country to use it. Can you just imagine this? Israel doesn't allow for anyone who don't carrying the Israeli nationality to be in their hospital or to provide the service for them. It's racism. It's really not acceptable,
No, I agree 110%. Before I let you go, I just had one or two more questions. I was going to ask, I believe Palestinian groups have canceled mass Gaza rallies over the coronavirus concerns. Is that also true?
Can you just repeat the question, please?
Oh, I was reading that some of the rallies in Gaza have been canceled. There were rallies planned for next week along the border, and they've canceled those rallies due to coronavirus concerns.
I think this is true. This is what happened here. Even in 30th of March, also here we have the Great March of Return Committee. They were to organize a huge protest again in the anniversary of the Great March of Return and the anniversary of the Land Day, as Palestinians celebrating the Land Day each year, and they canceled this protest because of coronavirus.
Do you guys have, so you're short on medical equipment. Are there any masks or anything like that? Is there a shortage of masks? Are there masks?
It's hard. It's hard to find the masks here in Gaza because many people were bought them recently and they were not enough. Added to that, to give you, let's call it positive news, maybe the world will believe us. There is a Palestinian small factory here in Gaza who makes masks. They are providing those masks to the Israeli side. Have you heard about that?
No. Tell me more, please.
There is a small factory here in Gaza, and this factory were stopped working because of the Israeli siege. But recently, Israel asked them to work to make masks for them, and now they are exporting the masks from Gaza Strip to the Israeli side.
Mm-hmm.
While we are, as Palestinians, are not prevented, but we don't have enough masks here, Can you just imagine this? And this is happening, I swear. There is a small factory here in Gaza recently which reopened again in order just to make masks and export them to Israeli people who is actually in need for those masks more than us here.
It sounds like, I just want to note for listeners, it's very crowded in Gaza. There's a lot of impoverishment. I want to ask you, how have the people of Gaza been dealing with this? How have they been going about their lives in light of the coronavirus? Because the Palestinian people have been through so much, and it breaks my heart to see coronavirus hitting Gaza.
We faced 3 aggressions in the last 10 years here in Gaza. It was very aggressive you know. And we call the coronavirus war also. We call it like aggression. And we are doing our best, you know. We are trying to make the paradise in the middle of hell to deal with the coronavirus or to deal with the daily life here. We are in lack, as I said, we are in lack for medication, food, electricity, fuels, power, many things here. But despite all of that, we are creating the paradise. We are still still optimistic that we need to live, we need to breathe. That's it, that's all. And about coronavirus, people are more stressful. They are more worrying about what's gonna become here. They are afraid to be in disaster. They say and they believe that if the coronavirus entered Gaza, it's gonna kill like 50% of Gazans. The number will be increasing more than with it in United States. So that's why we are worried about that. And I'm still asking the world to listen to us and to help us to face and to deal with the coronavirus.
You know, I just want to say, if we've learned anything from coronavirus, it is that it doesn't matter if you are an Israeli, a Palestinian, an American. We are all affected by this, and it should be bringing us together rather than pulling us apart. We're all in this fight together, and I hope my listeners recognize that. I just want to let you have any parting words in regards to coronavirus, and also just how much the Palestinian people, I have to say I respect the Palestinian people, because you have come up against adversity constantly, and you keep on living, and you stay together as a community and keep fighting, and I really appreciate that.
We ask the world to fix its mistake, to give us opportunity to live, to give us opportunity to stay alive, to give us opportunity of freedom. And I hope the world will change its mind after the coronavirus. I hope that coronavirus is gonna change our world, the whole world, for better, away from wars, away from blood. As we are all saying right now, there is a positivity from the coronavirus, and we have to take it seriously. We are all living under the same sky. We are all covered by the same sky. We are all human beings. Coronavirus has no mercy. It doesn't make difference between if you are younger, if you are a leader or citizen, if you are child or man. So we have to care of each other. We have to be united against this virus, this invisible enemy, as the American administration call it. We have to be united. We have to believe in love and peace on this planet. We don't need to stop. We need to stop all kind of violence. We need to stop the fire. Instead of spending money on weapons and wars and fund the Israeli military, we need to fund the scientist people to create the medication and to improve our planet for better, inshallah.
This is maybe a loaded question, but do you think that Gaza, despite coronavirus, will pull through this? Because you as a people have been able to continue on despite all the horrors that have been unleashed upon your communities over the years. It seems like you're a fighting people that won't back down from even this coronavirus.
We hope that. But the reality is hard to describe. But as I said, we are optimistic and we hope to defeat it. We hope to be successful in defeating the coronavirus.
Well, I hope you defeat it as well. I hope we defeat it. We all bleed red. We're all under one sky, as you said. I want to thank you, Walid Mahmoud, for coming on Parallax Views. How can my listeners keep up with your work?
They can follow me on Facebook. My link and my page is Walid Mahmoud, WALID Mahmoud. Or they can follow me on Twitter, Walid Mahmoud Rock. That's my work, and I'm working also as a freelance photojournalist for Al Jazeera English and many international news agencies.
And anything else you want to say before we part ways?
I want to add that coronavirus is gonna die, but love and peace will never die.
I certainly can agree with you on that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, that does it for this edition of Parallax Views. I hope you found my conversation with Gazan photojournalist and activist Walid Mahmoud to be, at the very least, informative. And perhaps it gave you a little bit of hope that the people of Gaza are not giving up their fight and believe that we, humanity, will defeat the coronavirus pandemic. I recommend you follow Walid's work on his Twitter and Facebook to keep updated on the situation in the Gaza Strip. Let me know what you thought about this edition of Parallax Views by dropping me a line on Twitter at ViewsParallax or by email at parallaxviewspod@protonmail.com. Also, if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon, where you can hear archived editions of previous Parallax Views programs, as well as the Parallax Views current events program, The Week That Was. New edition should be dropping today. It's an angry episode to end the month of March. And with that being said, until next time, you've been listening to Parallax Views with Parallax Views. To Parallax Views with Parallax Views.
The way out is not simply to say, don't do it, just to prohibit. If nothing else, if we don't do it, others will be doing it like crazy. So, we have to confront the problem. But no, basically, I know of the great anxieties, problems, new forms of control, but it's also new forms of freedom. This is why I always emphasize that internet and all this new digital stuff, it's a very ambiguous phenomenon, but it's the field of struggle. New forms of enslavement, but at the same time, new incredible forms of freedom. We have to accept the fight with no nostalgia for old, allegedly more authentic communities or whatever. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid.